Hello, folks. Welcome and thank you for joining wherever and whenever you are for another Logiwa QuickTake. We are very thrilled this session to bring you a particularly unique QuickTake with our special partner and co-host eHub. Today's topic: how 3PLs win through sustainable fulfillment operations. So again, thank you very much for our co-sponsor eHub. Let's get right into this important topic, folks. Um, just to get us started, just to give us a feeling for this issue of sustainability, some numbers for you. 57% of consumers are willing to change buying habits to support sustainability. And of course, as you move towards Gen Z and younger consumers, that number only increases. 60% of global greenhouse emissions are due to supply chain activity. Certainly makes sense when you consider all of the activities that comprise the entire supply chain, inclusive of transportation. But these two stats, in and of themselves, beg the motivation for operating sustainable fulfillment. Also, 63% of CEOs who are working towards sustainable operations are realizing that they lack the data and visibility they need in order to achieve those goals. And 75% of CEOs realize that the path to get there includes the need to digitize their operations. So, with those numbers kind of laying the groundwork for our discussion, let's break down how we're going to talk about this topic and then get right into it. First, what does it mean to be a sustainable fulfillment operator? Second, how and why should you be? And what does this mean for growth for you as a 3PL or logistics service provider? And then lastly, what are steps that you can take to move towards sustainable operations? And we are thrilled to have a very austere panel with us today. We have George Wojciechowski, we have Reed Lenz, we've got Adam McCoy and Jamie Bobka with us. And what I'd like to do, gentlemen, is have you all introduce yourselves, as I'm sure you'll do a better job than I. So, George, if you could kick it off for us, please, sir.
Hi, Wayne. Super excited to be here. My name is George Wojciechowski, and I'm CEO and co-founder of Manifest.eco, a sustainable 3PL based in Austin, Texas.
All right, George, I'm not sure if everyone could hear you. And are you okay? Very good. All right. And Reed, please, sir.
Halo. We are another sustainable 3PL. We're based centrally out of West Palm Beach, Florida, but we actually have access and ownership around 7 warehouses in the U.S.
All right. Thank you very much, Reed. Adam.
Adam McCoy here. I lead our product initiatives here at eHub, and we are working to build a technology platform that supports 3PLs and merchants and their fulfillment needs.
All right. Thank you very much. And Jamie Bobka, last but not least.
Yeah. So I'm Jamie Bobka, Director of Product Operations and Analytics at Logiwa. I lead our efforts here in monitoring market trends and collecting feedback from our customers and partners to help inform our roadmap and our technology initiatives.
All right. Thank you. All right. So, panelists, thank you very much. What we would like to do is jump right into our discussion. So let's talk. Let's go ahead and begin with our first topic: what it means to become a sustainable fulfillment operator. And so, Jamie, I'm going to go ahead since you got to introduce yourself last. I'm going to kick this off with you, if I may. Sustainability, it's a somewhat generic term. Let us know, let the audience know from your perspective what it means, and what it means to your and our customers.
Sure. Yeah, so to kick us off, we define sustainability as simply just a high level of, at a high level, just how do you meet the needs of customers and consumers and clients today without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their goals and their needs. So for a 3PL business owner, one of Logiwa WMS's customers, sustainability is operating in a manner that's going to minimize the negative impact on environment, society, economy, etc., but while also maximizing positive impacts. For a 3PL's customer, sustainability is that growing factor of, is a growing factor in choosing which one of their logistics providers are going to use. As more and more of these customers and their end consumers seek these out and prioritize environmentally responsible practices, things like reducing transportation related carbon emissions, using less packaging, more sustainable packaging, and implementing more circular supply chain practices. So for our customers, this is a rapidly growing trend. It's been growing for several years, and I feel like we're going to see a lot more of it. And it's a good topic for us to really dive into today.
Yeah, no, thank you. So, so let's go right to Reed, CTO, Ecom Halo, 3PL operator. Reed, what is your take on sustainability? If you can play off some of the things Jamie mentioned.
Certainly. So to us, around what Jamie had stated, it applies to a lot of different facets for the customer itself. We like to look at it across mainly, the environment, and that would also include the work environment, where you're positioned for the customer as well, and then exceeding expectations because you want to make sure that their business is also sustainable. How can they continue that forward for more than just maybe their lifespan, right? It could be a future generation thing in terms of passing that on, but it's also passing on a better ecosystem as well. So in terms of what Ecom Halo shoots to do, even in our workforce, we do have a tight partnership with Autism Speaks. We do have a number of employees that are on the spectrum, and we like to make sure that we're giving them valid opportunities. I think that's one of the greatest things here is that it's not just, hey, look, we're also going to watch out in that sustainable packaging, eliminating package waste, minimizing transportation, especially in the air side of things. We're also trying to say, look, also within your work environment, you're having those considerations as well. So how do you go above and beyond for the customer and show them that you're considering things that they might not have even thought of themselves that apply into the sustainability bucket?
Exactly. Sustainability can be a much broader term than most folks often consider it to be. George, what is your take on sustainability in general?
I think it's important when you talk about sustainability is to not view it as a binary yes or no. To me, sustainability is a journey. It's a journey for your business. It's a journey where you, as a business owner or a member of a team, decide to pick up the banner and you know and go on that journey with your team and include in as a stakeholder in a decision making process. Are we factoring in the environmental impact of these decisions? Are we choosing, obviously we all want to build successful businesses. And so the bottom line matters. But in addition to that, are we taking into account what effect this has on the planet, on the environment, on the communities that we operate and live in? So it's very much a journey in that regard. When we started Manifest about a year and a half ago, we were very open that we didn't have all the answers. The 3PL industry at that time hadn't really explored the idea of sustainability. Actually, I was quite shocked in the 10 years or so that I had been in e-commerce. So much had changed and so much had just so rapidly developed apps, tools, marketplaces, etc. But by and large, we were still doing fulfillment the same way that we were doing, 20, 25 years ago. And so, we weren't going to have all the answers on day one. So we started with simple things. We eliminated plastics from our fulfillment operation. We started offsetting the carbon footprint on every shipment that left our warehouse. And we sourced biodegradable, curbside recyclable materials for not only the vessels that we send our customers' products in, but also for void fill and things like that. So, and we're continuing to develop our company with sustainability as our North Star. So hence the journey. We are committed to building a great business. We all want to build a great business, but we also want to build a business that leaves a legacy that we can be proud of. And sustainability takes into account not only doing good business, but how are we doing for the planet, for the community, for the people that we care about and we're going to leave the world to.
No, exactly. And thanks for queuing up the discussion, because we are going to talk about those things, why this is actually it's good sustainability on, and there are ways to jump into it without having to boil the proverbial ocean, right? When you get started. So thank you, sir. Adam, from your perspective at eHub, you work with many 3PLs. So I'm sure sustainability is a topic that is no stranger to you. Give us some of your insight from your discussions with your clients and working in the industry from us, where you see sustainability going.
Sure. Yeah. And I think I really liked what George was talking about, that journey, because, that is really kind of what we experience with working with our 3PL network, and the 3PLs that are in our network, as well as the merchants that are coming inside, coming to eHub looking for 3PL services. So we have the 3PL network. Effectively, what our 3PL network works to do is we take criteria and attributes of merchants, and we take criteria and attributes of 3PL, and we use an algorithm to match merchants to 3PL based on those criteria. And that gives us a lot of opportunity to have engagement with 3PLs and merchants to understand really what their needs are and what their focuses are in terms of fulfilling their products. And so, I'd say it's interesting because we get a really good spectrum. We've got, more than 125 on average merchants come to eHub every week looking for 3PL services. And so we get to see kind of in great detail what their focuses are. And you see kind of these segments, you still have groups. And I think George is talking about this really well in that journey side. We see the early side of the journey where they're still really focused on kind of their main focus is driving cost down on the fulfillment side. We see other segments where we've got groups that want to participate in sustainable fulfillment, maybe not quite exactly sure how. They understand kind of the need and the value, but they're still kind of balancing out economic aspects and how do they get started, and how they can pursue that. And then we've got other merchants in kind of another segment that, sustainable fulfillment is part of their brand. It's a feature of their product. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's not just a question of, yes, I want to do it, but I don't know how. I absolutely have to do it. This is a reflection of our brand. It's a reflection of our product features, and we want sustainable fulfillment. And so we get to see all different segments. And I think George is really right that journey path, that's true on the merchant, and it's true on the 3PL side as well.
And it sounds like, Adam, you're seeing more and more people start down this path, take this journey. It's sounding like of sustainability.
Yeah, and from a product perspective, I mean, we're constantly focused on understanding where the market is going. And for me, one of the probably most exciting reports out there is a report actually done by Deloitte, and they did the 2022 CXO sustainability report. And in that report, I know you talked a lot about some statistics at the beginning, but that report had one that really kind of got me excited, where they interviewed over 2,000 organizations, and particularly the C-suite. And what they found was that 67% of those organizations were going to take action on more sustainable materials, particularly around kind of, the recyclable product materials, et cetera. And I think that bodes really well into sustainability in the fulfillment side of things, because when we start talking about packaging, that's an area that we can immediately, work to have sustainable fulfillment in terms of improved packaging and products.
For sure, for sure. So with that, we've got roughly 2/3 of the market going down this path, taking this journey, as Adam just mentioned. So let's start talking about that now, and let's go ahead and move on to our second general topic. Now that we've discussed sustainability at a high level, um, and let's go ahead and talk about how sustainability can drive growth for 3PLs. In other words, before we take step one of the journey, should we take this journey? Why should we do it? What's the impact on our businesses? So let's start that discussion, and let me go in and Reed, if I can ask you to kick things off. You know, I imagine one of the first questions on people's minds who are listening is about the return on investment of all of this. Everything we're talking about would seem to, cost, right? But surely there is that return in adopting sustainable practices. So, from a pure business perspective, Reed, why would a 3PL or a brand managing their own fulfillment, for that matter, consider making this investment in sustainability? Why would they?
Yeah, why would they? That's a great question, Wayne. So I'd say the biggest thing is no longer a niche play, or it should no longer be a niche play, right? Some folks may say it is, but when you start to see, from Wall Street to Main Street, Wall Street requiring those ESG reports on an annual basis, right? You're going to see them in some of the, energy sectors and some of the other sectors, but it's becoming more and more a focus point that yes, you're making money, yes, you're, giving back, but what are you doing in terms of your impact on society? And I'm going to say that loosely because that society could include people, it could include the environment, the places you work, etc. Those are some of the most important aspects to really consider, because if you make money, great, but if you're not putting it to good use or to good focus, then I'd say nobody effectively wins.
Yeah.
One of the things here at Ecom Halo, we are a B Corp pending organization. So we just need a final review here. And, we've said, look, we're going to put our money where our mouth is and start to show that the profits that we do make and the guidelines that we do follow within the company and even our employee handbook show that these are the things that are important to us.
Mm-hmm.
So in addition to that, one of our founders is a big follower of conscious capitalism. So if you look at Mackie from Whole Foods really being one of the biggest people in that space and that really kicked it off, what they say is don't apologize for making profits. Every business out there, of course, has to make these profits in order to survive, in order to employ, the groups of people that they do. But again, if you're not putting them to good use, again, what the heck is the point, right? We could say a few other words in there. But again, we continue to follow these principles for ourselves, as George mentioned before, having a North Star for that journey.
Yeah.
Right. And you could say, similar to that happiness quote of happiness is not a destination, happiness is, the path. It's the same thing here within sustainability for us is, look, you got to continuously get better. You've got to consider these things. You've got to say, look, we're not only reinvesting in people, we're reinvesting in how we do things, where we do things, and effectively how we deliver for the customer. Because again, we want to provide our best foot forward for them. So that way they can see that we're taking the responsible steps in terms of progress in this effort of true sustainability within the places that we work. So, all those things to say, right?
Yeah.
No longer niche, or it should no longer be niche. Don't think that it's just a small group of customers, from our standpoint, are worried about this. It's really the consumers are worried about this. The customers are certainly focused on this, and it provides a great end-to-end brand experience.
Yeah, no, 100%. And you mentioned brand experience, and I think it may be hard to quantify this in some cases, but being a sustainable fulfillment operator is a huge brand statement for a company. I think, and George, I know that this is a big part of Manifest and what you do. As part of the way you present yourself and as a 3PL, can you talk to me a little bit about the whole aspect of branding and value that goes along with being a sustainable operator?
Yeah, really well said by Reed. I want to say, and I applaud Reed and his team at Ecom Halo for going the B Corp route. I've been through that application, and it's not easy, but it's a wonderful exercise to get started for you and your team when you're starting to look at, okay, how can we level up as a company and as an organization? What standards should we put in our sites? So that was in a really great read. To and kind of going off your question, Wayne, the stats that you represented on the first slide when we started off the presentation, the bottom line is customers are demanding it. Customers are demanding, consumers are demanding it. I think it was like 77 or 74% would pay more for a sustainable product.
Mm-hmm.
So as much as it is the right thing to do, it's also a very pragmatic business decision. The shift towards sustainability is inevitable. Are you going to be forced to do it down the road, or are you going to do it now and really put your stamp in that space as one of the early thought leaders, early companies that adapted these principles in sustainability as a North Star? From a branding perspective, it makes so much sense as well. Why? Other than Reed and maybe a couple of other companies, it's very rare that I come across a 3PL that is able to confidently assert that sustainability is one of their top values.
Right.
But like I said, customers are demanding it. Businesses want to make customers happy. Now merchants are going to demand it of their 3PLs. So from the fact that it's a small saturation of 3PLs that are practicing sustainability as a high priority right now is an immediate competitive advantage.
Sure.
And then brands, going back to brands, when brands go on the search for looking for 3PL partners, the really smart brands understand that for them, their positioning, this is a competitive advantage. If you can deliver on all the world-class fulfillment needs that they're going to need in omni-channel, and so can another 3PL, being able to, for that brand to assert that the way that their fulfillment is done sustainably is a competitive advantage for them as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If any of us, all of us knows, like, people that are a lot younger, 19, 25, 27 years old, the way people shop nowadays is shopping with brands and retailers and companies that match their ethos around social and environmental values. It's the new customer loyalty. And so it's changed. Consumers are demanding it, brands are demanding it, service providers need to provide it. And the ones that do it sooner than later will reap the rewards a lot quicker. And the
Sure.
change, and you'll have more time to adapt as well, versus 3 years from now when everyone else is doing it, and all of a sudden we're bringing in a consultant for $60,000 a month to tell us how to do it. How do we become sustainable?
Right. Exactly. Thanks, George. Adam, George just said, right, since you're in the mix of making these matches, between the merchants, the logistics providers, would you reflect the same the same sense that George is getting, that you're getting merchants now and retailers who are going as one of their top criteria, going, we need a sustainable provider for fulfillment? You're seeing this grow, and what are you hearing as the motivations for this when you're talking to the merchants?
Yeah, I think the what George referred to as that competitive advantage was really kind of that key phrase, right? Because if you're in the 3PL kind of space, there's obviously a lot of different factors and criteria that are going into a merchant's decision. And for a merchant, we talked about that segment that, it's part of their brand, it's part of their product feature set. And so for them, it's not a question of, are we going to do sustainable fulfillment or not? It's, yes, we're going to do sustainable fulfillment, and we need to find the right partner to do that. And so I think what George is talking about, having that competitive advantage and being able to do that, it clearly provides some competitive advantage and can drive growth. I would also argue too, and that as you do this better, right, as you kind of go through this process and you become more efficient at it, that also provides the economic drivers for you as an organization, where you become more scalable and more efficient, more cost effective at doing that.
Yeah, yeah. Sustainability can actually improve operational efficiencies in cases. No, thanks a lot. And well, speaking of that, Jamie, I'm going to pull you back into the conversation here, sir, and let's talk a little bit about the making this real, right? As people decide to start down this journey, there are some things, and that have already been mentioned. Some of the proverbial low hanging fruit that 3PLs can do. But what type of tools and tech should they be looking at as they approach becoming more sustainable? What are some of the major high level considerations there?
Sure. So, I mean, as you've heard so far, I mean, motivations for sustainability are across the board. It's almost like a take your pick of where you want to start, based on your industry. We've talked about things like brand reputation, consumer buyer patterns. Sustainability is kind of transitioned away from niche or being a competitive advantage to more of it's going to become a competitive neutralizer. If you're not doing it, you're behind the curve. There's other factors out there too: compliance, governmental regulation. We talked about some of those. Employee retention, employee morale. Like these are, employee retention in our industry is a difficult topic. And so this is just another one of the levers that you can pull of trying to increase to try and reduce that impact. But I guess as a software provider, our primary focus is always keeping a pulse on where the market's going, making sure our platform's always providing the value and tools needed for our customers to be successful. And there's a lot of ways that we can impact that, particularly things like smart routing of orders, or if we're recommending the proper package types, or trying to route an order to a particular location where there's going to be the least amount of transport. Things like this are not just sustainability focused in the context of like being less wasteful. They're cost reduction efforts. Even if you're like, there's a lot of very easy steps you can get and motivations you can get to take a step into this direction. And yeah, I mean, I think we've already talked about a couple of those examples so far, and there's plenty more that we can go through.
Yeah, and we will in our last topic. Thank you very much, Jamie. While we are still on this topic of the how of driving sustainable operations, and also the why, right, of why we're doing it. Let's kind of break this down into kind of top line and bottom line impacts on the business of a 3PL. We'll start with the top line first, start at the top of the old funnel. And George, if I could ask you to talk about how you have seen sustainability efforts grow business, drive business development efforts, just really affect that top line of your operations.
Yeah, I've seen it in multiple ways, and kind of going back to the previous topic, the the branding, certainly the branding of sustainability catches a niche audience that I've had customers over the last year and a half that don't look too closely at, like, okay, what services they know that we generally do fulfillment, but they'll come to me and tell me, like, hey, I've run a sustainable brand for like 4 years, and when it comes to fulfillment, I've had to look the other way the entire time because I just know what goes on there, and it's not great. I don't, I'm sure you're competent, but just because you do what you do, and you do it in a way that's sustainable, you have my business. That's happened a couple of times actually, and I've been like, whoa. So there's a niche audience for that there. So that clearly affects your bottom line when, just by the virtue of your value, you're attracting an audience. It doesn't cost anything. It's just who you are, and that's wonderful. Am I? Yeah. And so, am I understanding your question correctly? Or are we talking deeper into the revenues, Wayne?
No, really top line, George, and I think you did address it. I mean, it is a huge competitive advantage if you're talking about marketing your services, right? You mentioned people coming to you more or less organically because they know that sustainability is a North Star of yours. I think we're entering the point in the marketplace where actually touting this, touting yourself as a sustainable operator is going to become, like Jamie said, table stakes for success, not no longer a differentiator down the road, but right now would be the time to differentiate. So yeah, great answer, sir.
Yeah, and I also think it's important for you to share the data with your customers. Like, Like, one of the things that we do regularly with our invoices and manifest is, in addition to the invoices that go out, we include an impact report, letting the brands know the impact that they've made by choosing to work with a sustainable fulfillment provider. They all want to do it, they just don't know how. So having a partner that knows how and represents the data back to them is super important in terms of like customer loyalty and their satisfaction, because now it allows them to gain the power of that data and repurpose it to their own audience and grow their audience. And so it's a really virtuous chain reaction of data and action.
That's a great way to describe it, is that that upward spiral of virtual benefit that the whole industry receives when we start working in a more sustainable fashion. Reed, to follow up on that, uh, you know talk a little bit about um, the top line impact on your business, maybe through some examples at Ecom Halo, or the way that you approach the marketing of what you do to your clientele.
Certainly. So similar to George, as he said, some people come to him because, that's what they're, putting out there as, look, this is, our central tenet of the company. Very similar here, that we've had a number of people find us simply because we're on the B Corp registry. Hey, look, I'm interested in your fulfillment services purely because that's where I saw you. And that was, as George kind of said, it is a pretty long survey. It's nice that you get an objective value, but, free marketing, if you will, that somebody was able just to go out there and do that. Now, of course, it was our time and implementation, but we've had it that way. We've also had it folks looking up sustainable 3PL e-commerce fulfillments. They'll come to you and say, hey, look, I have an interest. And so that's another great thing. In terms of like sustainability from a business perspective, we help step in and make retail introductions so that way we can help them grow a bit further as well. So it's really tackling even the sustainability of their business is how we really push out what our central tenets are for our business, and it has been proving to be very interesting. Certain folks come out of the holiday season, and so as we step in, it's here's what we can do, and here's where we're headed. Similar to George, I think he said 18 months ago, we're in a very similar time path here, which is interesting. Mm-hmm. And so we're continuing to say, hey, look, what we can continue to improve for the customer and provide for the customer from a top line standpoint. Yeah. And I know that there was also a piece around, bottom line, which we can address, a separate part. But.
Well, and in fact, thank you, Reed. Let's go ahead and dive right down to the bottom line then. And actually, let me bring Adam back in because Adam, again, as you're dealing with the putting together people who are interested in sustainability, the logistics providers, the merchants and retailers. You mentioned you had mentioned earlier, there's some fairly easy low hanging fruit, things that you can do immediately to start realizing bottom line benefits from sustainable operations. Can you revisit that and maybe expand upon that a little bit from your exposure to the broader market?
Sure, absolutely. I want to give you an example here, but before I do, I honestly feel that as you kind of deep dive into this, and there's this thought that sustainable fulfillment is more expensive, right? I think I think there's a lot of misconceptions in that when you kind of go down that path, because reducing waste can absolutely be a very economical and cost-effective thing to be doing. And so one example, we had a 3PL, they were working through the prospecting stages of bringing on a merchant. And we do a lot of data analysis as kind of part of our services. And they had asked us to kind of help do some data analysis on this particular merchant. And the primary focus, honestly, was cost savings. That was kind of the primary driver of what we were trying to help assist this 3PL with. However, as we went through the process, Jamie talked about right size packaging as kind of a technology solution. And so one of the things that we discovered actually is we could help right size package some of their high volume products, eliminating waste. The projected savings on that was $40,000. And so when you think about, hey, eliminating waste, Well, in this instance, it was actually reducing. There was cubic services in terms of the carrier services. We reduced the package size, moved them into a different tier with the packaging. Therefore, because the packaging was smaller, reduced the overall shipping cost. And so I really think there's a lot of opportunity here to, especially in that low hanging fruit, to find opportunities to not only become more sustainable, but also reduce cost and drive that bottom line down.
How aspect of becoming sustainable here in just a little bit. You mentioned while we're talking about packaging. I know Reed, from our previous discussions, you had a story about actually changing some of the packaging decisions that your clients have been making. If so, Reed, do you have any? Yeah, do you want to chime in on some of the bottom line impacts that you've realized?
Nice. So, with one of our customers, we were actually overboxing a pretty decent sized product. It was actually also generating some empty space within the box. We don't have one of those custom boxing machines, but still the box was at least pretty close to the product dimensions. We actually talked to the customer about, just labeling the product packaging itself and shipping it out, which helps in dimensions. It also helps with eliminating the box waste that's going to be generated because somebody's probably just going to throw that away as well. Um, but that's where we stepped in, because how many times have you seen batteries shipped to your house and then all of a sudden you open up this box and it's just this little battery piece that's sitting inside? I know that happens when I order watch batteries, but that's one of the things that really got us to think, like, what are we doing here? If we don't have to actually overbox the item itself, then at that point, let's not do that. Now, of course, we need to make sure, between manufacturing and the product packaging, that it is safe for transport. It's got enough protective material on the inside. But at that point, you can start to really save. Now, when you look at that, and this might sound kind of silly, but you're also saving your operations team from creating the box, closing the box, and going from there, which eventually plays into an efficiency aspect of it as well. Because you're saying, looking at the bottom line, it not only makes sense to the customer because they're not looking at potential, dimension weights here, but it's also saving an operations team, allowing them to process more orders. So really it's a win-win. Back to Adam's point from before, we have a saying in here, it's, save green by going green. Well, that's perfect because you're saving green and not paying for us for that box, but then you're also going green because you're creating less waste. So again, win-win the whole way around.
Um, and George, from your perspective, again, talking about bottom line now, we've talked a bit about packaging. From your perspective, what are some of the advantages your company has realized from your green operations?
Yeah. Well, Reed makes a fantastic point, and something I like to remind people of as well, which there's not, utilizing sustainable materials and sustainable supply is super important. But the only thing more sustainable than that is using less of it. And that's a priority that our operations team has at Manifest, where we work with each client to find the optimal packaging. Because, like Reed said, we've all had that experience. We order a battery or a tea tree oil, and it comes like in a refrigerator-sized box, and it's absolutely ridiculous, and it makes us feel terrible. Uh, so, on the bottom line, I think it's loyalty. It's customer loyalty. It's helped our bottom line because even we've been in business a year and a half, which is not all that long, but with the dozens of merchants that we do work with, we have 100% retention, and that's part of that. That's in large part because of the values that we represent, the values that we share with these merchants, and it's certainly helped our bottom line. Like, we all know the upfront customer acquisitions costs in this business aren't easy to swallow. You look at like what it costs per customer acquisition, you're like, boy, that's a lot of money. So being able to retain those clients and have their loyalty and have them super happy with the service that you provide and very proud to be working it with you, and seeing them them seeing you as your true supply chain partner, just creates a longer, more prosperous relationship in the long run, and that affects the bottom line considerably.
years ago, the only type of marketing that really works in the world is word of mouth, right? When people realize that, and merchants realize they're working with, a sustainable operator who's going to not only help their brand but help their bottom line as well, and help them grow their business. Yeah, it's like you said, it's wins all across the board there. But
Yeah.
thanks very much, folks. All right, well, we're at the 40-minute mark. As mentioned, this is a special quick take, so it's not as quick as some of the others, but this is a very important conversation. So what I'd like to propose is we move on to our third topic for our panelists, and that third topic, steps to take to create sustainable operations. So we'll kind of get down to the proverbial runway here a little bit. So let's just discuss the ways to begin. The ways to get started. Is it incremental, as we've discussed a bit, or is there a more wholesale way to just move your operations into, into a new mode, into a sustainable mode of operating? So, Adam, let me go ahead and start with you here again. Do folks in your experience from your discussions generally understand the how, the why? It's a differential value, it's the thing to do for many reasons, but they really don't know how to begin. What is your experience talking to merchants?
There's a good understanding of needs and whys, and a lot of that understanding is there. I think the how, it could probably feel pretty daunting for different organizations, and not knowing exactly where to start. And to be honest, a lot of 3PLs and organizations are, busy doing their regular operational work, and so then, this is maybe one more thing on top of their existing work that they feel like is daunting. And so I think the how is definitely the key question there. And we're obviously not in the fulfillment side. We do get to provide a lot of consultation and insight into our 3PL network partners, as well as the merchants that come in. But I would love to. I've loved the detailed examples that Reed and Georgia provided, and I think hearing about their stories, it provides that journey that George referenced before. I think that can
Right.
be a really strong roadmap for others that are looking to go down that same journey.
And yeah, thank you, Adam. So, George, as Adam mentioned, you've worked with many folks who have taken this journey with you. Um, in what cases are companies who are coming in, maybe this sustainability was not their North Star to begin with, but they've decided to make it a guiding principle? Do you find these companies looking to do everything wholesale all at once, or do you find them coming to you just to look for some incremental um, ways to become more sustainable? What's your experience in that?
Yeah. And that's part of the problem, Wayne. Everybody wants to be sustainable and build sustainable businesses, but there just isn't that mainstream knowledge specific to every single business category or every single type of business. So I tell businesses like, hey, there are very small things that you can start off with that start to make a difference and compound into realistic and formidable progress. And don't be afraid. I always tell them as well to lean on what others are doing. Copy us, copy other ideas, and then that's the easiest path. You don't need to put pressure on yourself and your team to reinvent the wheel or invent the wheel for sustainability for your fulfillment operation. There are small things that are happening every day all around you that you can start to implement. And, for example, one of the first things that we decided to do was offset the carbon footprint on all of our shipments. We work with a fantastic partner called EcoCart. Now, we don't necessarily hang our hat on carbon offsets. It's the right thing to do. And working with a partner that can help you verify that your investment in carbon offsets is going to where you intend it to go, which is everything from reforestation to preserving, rain, tree farms, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we work with our partner EcoCard to do that. But indulgences, I like to kind of joke that they're a little bit like buying indulgences from the Catholic Church in the Middle Ages. They're not the end all be all, but it's a good place to start because they do make a difference, in my opinion, for the planet.
Yeah.
And then, something as simple as walking around your warehouse and deciding, hey, are we using the right type of LED lights that help save power? Do the lights have to be on all the time in every corner of the warehouse, or should we make it movement tracked lighting?
Hmm.
And then recycling. Like we've all been in the fulfillment industry for a while, and we see the amount of trash that gets picked up, the amount of cardboard that we have in the corner of the FC that nobody wants to pick up. So figuring out ways what to do with all that excess waste and trash, all those are small steps that compound into real meaningful differences.
No, no, makes total sense. And Reed, from your perspective, some of the things that Ecom Halo are doing. I know you had mentioned lighting. You had mentioned some other things in the past. Can you expand a little bit and talk about how you help your clients move into a more move into sustainability and how your operations are providing unique ways to save to save on environmental costs.
Certainly. So as George talked about, like how to approach it in that standpoint, I'll take a little slightly different approach, and I'm not necessarily pushing that you go for, LEED certified buildings, but there's no reason that you can't go and simply, take some of the requirements and implement them into the warehouses or offices in which you're situated. As George said, take what's already out there. Steal if you have to. I used to have an old boss that said, "Look, I'm not over stealing. I'll give you credit, but I'm going to totally steal the idea." But go out there, look at some of those LEED certified requirements. You can just simply change out your lighting. Right now, a lot of warehouses are going towards LED lighting from more of a lifespan standpoint, but it also has a much lower energy footprint. If you also look at auto on and off lights, right? We have a number of conference rooms and some of them don't have windows. If you go in there and you're really still, then at that point you might end up in the dark, but that's okay, right? So that way you're making sure that these aren't on all day. Think about water efficiency is another one. So, everybody doesn't want to talk about going to the bathroom, but, at that point, that is something that actually directly plays into it in terms of water usage.
Sure.
And the last one that we also look at is the location and access to public transportation. So that one is, our office here, we're 2 blocks away from what's called the Bright Line that can get you down and back to Miami. They're going to continue to build additional stops. But that's another, I think, overlooked aspect behind sustainability is promoting the use of more public transportation or really even carpooling type services where you can actually get a lot of benefits as well that the customer might not see. And those also might be the items that you overlook in terms of communicating to your customer on the benefits of how we are being sustainable today. You just think of it as, well, everybody should want to do that. And, we talked about some of the younger crowds these days, they're expecting those things. And, kind of as you continue to move along, it's really just making sure that you're continuing to communicate those things because they are making a difference and they are important.
That's a great point. And out there, many of the folks in the audience, other logistics operators, 3PLs, 4PLs, were probably probably realize that that there are some numerous ways to realize in usually just taking some small steps to move towards sustainability. It is not a decision that has to be made that will change your operations in a wholesale fashion. I think is really the main point that we're getting across here. Um, and and so what I'd like to do now is ask all of our panelists, based on everything that we've discussed, um, the what's, the whys, and the hows of sustainable fulfillment operations. Kind of give us some wrap up statements. And Jamie, I haven't picked on you in just a little bit. So, sir, if I may, talking to our audience, how would you sum up sustainability and the way that this industry can and should be approaching it?
Sure. So I'll try and paint a broad brushstroke here, but I think we've hit on a lot of the key topics. One of the key factors in the momentum behind sustainability is that there's so many different avenues to get started. 3PLs are already operating at razor thin margins. So the more of these opportunities to build your brand and business that you can take advantage of, the more of these levers that you can pull, the more advantageous you're going to be. So starting off with like dipping your toes in the pond, we've talked about some of the simple levers like, LED bulbs, motion sensors, more usage of natural light. Sometimes it's just as simple as paint your roof white, minimize your cooling costs. That's a pretty simple and straightforward way to get started. But obviously, coming from the software side, we're hyper focused on giving our customers and our partners the proper tool set and technology to access more of these advanced levers. But also, we're doing this through partnerships and trying to bring out more of these like-minded software partners into our fold. So, Adam had talked about earlier about like packaging usage reduction and smart carrier routing, smart warehouse routing. These are all part of the ecosystem that comes with our platform and what we want to focus on. That's the last note I'll put in there is, there's a lot of carrots to be had here, but there's your sticks involved in action. We've talked about some of those, governmental regulation, lead certification, compliance standard, brand reputation, customer selection, buyer motivation, things like that. But I mean, if you're looking for an excuse or an easy route to start, I mean, there's plenty of them. It's almost take your pick. This session today has really been just a entire list of different ways that you can get started with the right partners and the right tool set.
100%. Yeah. And hopefully also some motivation to get started. Thanks, Jamie. Appreciate it. Adam, closing comments for our audience about sustainability from your perspective at eHub.
Yeah, there was something that Jamie, George, and Reed said that really kind of resonated, I think, with me. And I would just echo that, where, Jamie talked about partners, George talked about copying, and Reed talked about stealing ideas. And I find that there's a strong community where, you're not at this by yourself. There's a lot of partners. There's a lot of people out there that can help you. And so I would just say, work with those around you, join whatever community partnership you want to, in order to kind of take first steps and, work around that. Just, we talked about all the different steps. George and Reed provided some really good examples. So, I think leverage the community that we have in order to, make progress on those initiatives.
Right. Yeah, I'll call back exactly to what Jamie said about partnerships, and we're talking about really creating ecosystems of like-minded, sustainable folks in the industry, and these ecosystems are building right now. I think we're all seeing that. So thank you, Adam. Reed, if I may, sir, any wrap-up statements from you, from Ecom Halo's operations you'd like to share with the audience?
I'd say thanks for having us on this panel. First and foremost, I think it was great. It's awesome to be with other folks of like mind. As we talk about these communities, we're here ready to partner. Even with other 3PLs. Let's be honest, right? Let's set the standards now instead of having them be dictated to us. I've always been a big fan of setting that and then saying, okay, how do we make them better? Because I may have a good idea, but it can always be made better. Just in the same fashion of that journey of sustainability, it's a kind of a Kaizen mindset. Same thing here. Let's continue to put these things down, let's share them, and then let's continue to make them even better. Because if we just go out there and we hold them, it's not going to be good for anyone. That's not even a sustainable concept. The sustainability side of it is truly in the networking side and also the delivery side. So, again, thank you for having us. I definitely appreciate it.
Sustainability as an industry, and so it is. It's really a matter of how quickly we respond, and who responds best and fastest, and those are going to be the folks who are winning in this regard. George, if I may, from your perspective, sir, please take us out, wrap us up, and let us know from your perspective your final thoughts on sustainability in the industry.
Yeah, I think everything that needed to be said, or the main points that needed to be outlined, has been already discussed by this really wonderful and intelligent panel. I would say on your point, Wayne, that you just said, the market is driving us. And I would summarize this whole conversation by saying, and the shift towards sustainability is inevitable. So as a business owner, you need to have it on your map, and don't be afraid of that, because like we talked about, this is not something that you can just, on and off switch. This is a journey, and small steps are okay. They will compound into more and more progress and more implementation. But adapting that into your roadmap and into your thinking and your decision making for you and your team is the best way to get started. And you'll be surprised how much progress you can make really quickly just by making decisions and thinking about your business in environmentally friendly and sustainable ways.
Thank you very much, Reed, Adam, George, Jamie. Great conversation. Audience, thank you very much for joining. Everyone who attended will receive a recording of this webinar. You will also, you'll also please, if you have any questions, any comments, feedback for us, you can use the Q&A. We'll leave the webinar open for just a minute or so here. Any questions that you have while we are about at time, we will get back to you. Um, Thank you very much for joining another Logiwa Quick Take co-sponsored here today by our partner eHub. eHub, thank you very much for your support of this event. And audience members, you'll also find, along with a recording of this session, many other resources on direct-to-consumer fulfillment operations at the Logiwa resource site, logiwa.com/resources. We thank you all very much for your time and attention. Once again, panelists, thank you very much. Everyone stay safe, and we'll see you back for another Quick Take very soon.